Oh, sorry about that, everybody. I don't know what is happening today with my stream software, but
Technical gremlins.
yeah,
Mm.
got gremlins in the wires, I think. Yeah, so yeah, continue on your conversation. I don't know how much of that was cut out after because it all just froze on me.
Yeah.
Basically, I was saying it'd be more effective if we're going to say screw the mental stability of our children, to just go ahead and tell them if they don't clean up their toys that we're going to take them to the edge of town and stone them to death. Look, it says it right here in Deuteronomy.
Mm-hmm. I would scare the shit out of them.
Yeah,
Well, it's worth mentioning that if you're going to believe in the Bible as witnesses, profess to, you do have to accept that that's what happened, and you do have to accept that you should be okay with it. You have to be okay with it, right? You can't just observe and be like, "Yeah, gosh, that's terrible," but what happened? You have to be okay with it, and so, there's a huge difference between what was seen in the cartoon with clean up your toys and all that, but just as they're planting the seeds of listen and obey in that context, you have to just as readily listen and obey when you're reading the worst parts of the Bible. So,
Yeah, I don't know how things were for you, but I know when I was in it, they used to really talk about those things a lot, like those scenes of stoning people and stuff like that. And this is what this is how angry he gets about stuff. And no one ever questioned that. No one ever, it never bothered anyone. Everyone just kind of went along with it and were like, yeah, like it was never a point of question until I got out of it and looked back at it. Then it was like, yeah, that was kind of fucked up. Like, why does everybody just go along with it? Like, I know it when I went to mainstream churches, they wouldn't even talk about that kind of stuff for fear that people would start questioning it. But with witnesses, they just embrace that stuff wholeheartedly. I guess it kind of works with the end of the world scenario, where Jesus is this, arbiter of death. He comes in his horse and cuts everybody down with a giant sword. Like, you always picture this giant horse in the sky coming along, and he's cutting people down with a horse.
Here's the part. So I was never in JW. I was Catholic and Christian. With the way that it seems, I've heard the word obey quite a bit. Make Jehovah happy. And you're learning all this from your parents who are supposed to know what makes Jehovah happy and what doesn't. Does this open up a realm for like sexual abuse to where I'm going to touch you here because Jehovah thinks it's okay for me to? Jehovah wants me to do this, and you need to obey or else you're going to make Jehovah mad. Like, can this be used for that type of evil?
Yes. So, in a sense, it can. And so for in most situations, this obey message can be twisted to that sense. Because you talk to obey, and especially the higher up in the organisation you are. So, if you say got an elder there or a ministerial servant, then you talk to obey your parents, but you'd also talk to obey them in the same fashion. So as you're getting indoctrinated, your trust is it builds up in these people, to the point where these are God's representatives. You have to do what they say. They can't do no wrong. So if they do decide to then abuse you as a kid, then you're just going to go along with it. It's just going to be like sort of normalized in your mind because of that. You have to obey.
That hierarchy.
Yeah.
Like the head of every woman is the man, and the head of every man is the congregation, and the head of the congregation is Christ. And so it's like a hierarchy of chain of command there. And they, I was even when I was a ministerial servant, there's one sister that, she left her child with the elder to babysit while she did something, and he wound up molesting her kid. And then, we were all told about it, and they adjudicated over it. But the sister, she was so messed up. She used to be a heavy smoker before she became a witness. So it frazzled her and made her really freaked out. I mean, she was freaking out when she found out. And she smoked a cigarette. And they kicked her out of the church. They kicked her out of the congregation, disfellowshipped her. But the elder, he wasn't kicked out. He was just demoted. And I thought that was really fucked up.
Yeah.
Wow, this is kind of weird.
All the priorities are all messed up when it comes to, like, right down as what you're saying, to like the punishment for different things. Like in my situation, when I went to the elders about my sexual abuse, and instead of sorting it out the way I thought they were going to sort it out by disciplining her, the one who had been abusing me, it was my dad who got demoted. And he knew nothing of the abuse that was going on. But because he was head of the household, it was his punishment to take. And the level of punishment wasn't it? He was just demoted from elder to ministerial servant. That was it.
Yeah.
So even the level of punishment, and that was supposed to suffice for me. That was supposed to be justice served.
Yeah, they won't go to the police. Like, she was asking the elders, I want to press charges on them, screw that. And they're like, no, we don't, the Bible's very clear when it says brothers don't take brothers to court. This is going to make us look bad in front of the world, And she's like, and y'all are going to disfellowship me for smoking a cigarette? And you're lucky I don't put a bullet in that motherfucker's head. Like, and they're like, now, sister, don't talk like that. You're going to find yourself out of here. And they decided to just throw her out. It's like, fuck, man. Like, they have no heart, man.
Well, these are all issues that you find when you there's kind of two things here. One, have a group of people that, think the Bible is realistic, in every single way. Mm-hmm. So to think that the brothers don't take brothers to court thing should apply to child abuse, you have to take the Bible very literally to think it upholds, it's to be upheld in that situation. Mm-hmm. Additionally, when you have a suppressive culture where you're not, because, I was thinking about what you said a couple minutes ago, Justin, that, there's this decision tree and this sort of workflow of, it starts off with listen to dad or mom. It starts with cleaning, obeying with just cleaning up your toys, but it goes into just about everything else. Don't just listen to mom and dad, also listen to the elders, the ministerial servants, what have you, and not just about the small things, but about just about anything. And so that you get this blanket, this sort of almost, well, really for some, a literal get out of jail free card, because you get to do whatever you want with the authority of God. That's something I thought of too, that Tony Morris at the beginning of the first video that was played, mentioned this is from Jehovah. So, they're doing these things. They're saying it as though they have the direct backing of God, and yet under their watch, unfortunate things are happening. So
it's ridiculous. There was one elder whose daughter ended up pregnant, and she was just a teenager. Like, she was just like a freshman in high school. And she used to come to the congregation pregnant. And I always wondered, and a lot of people were mad. They were like, we think that this elder should be, demoted. Like, he's a bad example. But they take it by a case-by-case basis, It's like it never makes any rhyme or reason, And they claim that they pray on it, and God's Holy Spirit tells them what they should be doing in each and every situation, So it's just weird. It's so cultish.
Well, and to even call it a demotion admits that there's a hierarchy.
Yeah. That's right.
The bit that made me cringe in that video was when she says, thank you for obeying.
Bang
Not
me,
thank
yeah.
you for tidying up, but thank you for obeying. And I don't think that's anything that that's not something that a parent should be praising the kid for specifically for obeying. They should be teaching children how to the reasons why they need to do certain things, not just obey. So that a kid can build up the critical thinking skills that they need. I need to do this because this will help me in this way.
A lot of witnesses like to argue, like I brought that up too one time, and they told me that, well, we tell the kids to obey because at that age they can't understand. They're not at their age of reasoning. They're not 12 years old yet or whatever, and at that age they have to just be commanded to do things. But then when you come to a certain age, then you can start, then they can start applying it principally in their life. But the thing is, even the Bible says that we do all things for the glory of God, to the glory of Jehovah, and it's not about, how you benefit. That's what people post hoc or ad hoc talk about. But the Bible's very clear that you do all things to the glory of Jehovah and for his glory. He does all things to glorify his name, like even hardening Pharaoh's heart. What was the point in that? To bring glory to his name throughout all the earth,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the first, is it the first 3 commandments of the 10 commandments are all to do with God's glory and, not worshipping anyone else. And, so it just shows that, if this God does exist, what a horrible person he is. He's basically, a megalomaniac.
Right. And in Revelation, when all the angels in heaven and people that are there are all giving glory to Jehovah, that's what they do. They said from sun up to sundown, give glory to Jehovah forever and ever. Amen. It's like, that's all it's about. It's not about what's good for you or what's going to make society better or anything like that.
Yeah, and where else do we see that happening? Maybe like North Korea with the, the leaders of North Korea, that family. Can't remember the name now.
Wounds.
Yeah, the Huns. Yeah, they, just everything's about glorifying them, making themselves more powerful. It's what dictators do. We saw it with Hitler back in, 1930s and that. Everything was about glorifying his name, making him be this supreme leader. It's not really what you would expect from a loving creator or something, would it?
And where's the free will and all that? Like people say, well, God gives us free will, and this is why you can choose to worship God or not. And God gave you free will because, he didn't want you to be a robot and blah, 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 blah. But it's like, but you kind of are a robot. You're just going to live a little bit and then be destroyed according to the Bible. You're going to be destroyed for not using your free will the right way. It's just so contradictory. And all of this stuff is just instilled in children. So it's always about that.
Makes it a lot harder to be able to think freely once you are an adult. I mean, even for myself, having 20 years in, I still find the default thought process that I have on some topics are very much reminiscent of what it was like to be a witness. So, as Tony Morris mentioned, it's going to have, and you quoted it too, Scott, that it's going to have a lifetime effect. I mean, that's not a good thing with what we're talking about,
Right. That's right.
Yeah, and
what kind of things that you that carried over in your adult life?
Can you say that first part again? I just missed the beginning.
Yeah, like what sort of, because you were raised in it from a child, so I'm just curious, like what sort of, even though you're kind of out of it, but what effects have it had on your life up to now? Like what sort of things carry over?
Yeah, honestly, so much. I'd start with probably the biggest item is, um, grappling with mortality. Because you grow up being told, hey, you don't have to die. You'll never
Right.
die. In fact, it's almost, this just came to mind, but it's almost, isn't that the premise of what Satan said in the Garden of Eden? Oh, you don't have to die. And
Mhm.
that's kind of what it's like, being told, oh, you don't have to die. Everything will be fine. Even if you were to die, even though, of course, Armageddon's right around the corner, mind you, but even if you were to die, then you'll just be resurrected. He'll call and the dead will answer. And
Yeah, you'll
so
sleep.
and you'll see all the people that you've lost. So growing up being told that and then realizing, hey, wait a minute, that's not accurate. That's not, there's no reason to believe that. There's no evidence. It made me realize that, like, oh man, I'm gonna die one day. And when I first realized that, truly, deeply, and felt that, it had a profound effect on me, and I had to work through that for the better part of a year. So that's just one thing, but there's many things, and I think sometimes it's what sneaks up on you. It's the automatic reaction that you have when somebody might talk about something. For example, politics. Last year was my first time voting because I was raised to be apolitical. So just things that start off a certain way that you have to like manually change as things get farther down your line.
Yeah, so good. Those are good points because it's been a long time since I've been out, but I remember that distinctly. Like getting, over the fear of death was a really big one because they really, really get you to look forward to that. Like it becomes a huge part of your life that you're going to live. Like you feel special. You feel like, wow, all these other people are living a lie and they're all going to die, but not me.
Exactly. Well, you spend half your time looking forward to the paradise, the other half telling people that they're going to die if they don't join you. So you're always thinking about death in one way or another, either death or trying to avoid it. So,
Did you ever go in field service and look at houses and say, I'm going to take that house after the end of the world?
I did.
I
That,
was
yeah.
never
did
so
that?
macabre, but I heard of people doing that.
Yeah, I used to go out with these sisters, man, and they used to love going into good neighborhoods and looking at all the houses they're going to have after the world ends.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's crazy. You're like, yep, I'm going to have this house right here. This is mine. They used to claim it. No, this is my house. I already said I was going to take this one.
Yeah, in a sense, it sort of made you feel better when you were in the nice neighborhoods, and obviously people didn't want to listen to your message. You'd go away from that house, and you'd be thinking, "Yeah, I'm just going to take your house off you. It's all right that you don't want the message. That's good for me. I can have your house now."
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could see people you don't like dying. You'd like that too. This fool's going to be killed. Jehovah going to kill you, man. And I'm going to be right there laughing when he does it.
Yeah, it's a really fucked up ideology when you think about it in that sense, because you are literally living your life, always thinking about people's deaths, how they're going to die, and with some of the imagery as well that you had in the My Book of Bible Stories and some of the other books as well that we all read as children. You see those images when you're looking at people, or people are disagreeing with you. You're seeing them, dying in your mind.
And there's a psychological aspect towards your family members. Like if you have family members that get disfellowship and you cut them off, like whether it's your own child or your brother, your sister or brother, the reason why people were so, because some people say, well, Jehovah's Witnesses are so cold-hearted. How can you ban, why would you just cut your own child off forever for not, being a Jehovah's Witness? Now you can't even talk to your own child for the rest of their life. And the reason why is because they know their child is going to die forever anyways. And so it's better to just get over it now and work through it. Just learn how to disconnect from your own child and just understand that they're dead, you know. And, you know, when I go into the paradise, God's going to wipe all the tears from my eyes. There'll be no more sadness, no more suffering, you know, and part of that is because I've accepted that all my loved ones are gone forever. I don't have to be sad for them. Fuck them. You know, that's cold, man.
Yeah, very cold. Very cold.
Really feel like that. This is like not like, you know, this is like when you're a witness, like this is what you believe 100%. You know.
That reminds me, and I may have said this on the last stream, but you know, so before my mom was actually shunning me, and because it was before I got disassociated, you know, she would say things to me like, if I mentioned it, well, then, you know, if I were to die at Armageddon, you know, wouldn't you miss me? And she would say, oh well. That's what she'd say. Oh well. If you were to die, oh well. And she also even said one time, and I don't know exactly how she said it, but this was the gist, and I've heard similar stories, unfortunately, from others, that, you know, it'd be like, oh, I'll just have other kids. I mean, I'm no parent, but for the parents I do know, they're never viewing their children as dispensable and be like, well, I'll just have another kid to take. There's no replacing people. So to think that, and this is why I mentioned earlier, the whole normalizing, right? That it's all the concepts of violence and segregation are normalized all growing up, so that when you're an adult, it literally doesn't seem out of place to want to take someone's house because you think they'll be dead soon enough. And it doesn't seem odd to say you can just have more children if yours die at the hands of God. I mean, that's what we're dealing with here.
Oh yeah, it reminds me of the book of Job. Like if you talk to a witness about, like, a lot of Christians will do mental gymnastics to kind of explain the book of Job away. Not Jehovah's Witnesses. They'll just flat out tell you, hey, you know, Job, yeah, his whole family died. So what? They were replaced. Now what? Like, yep. Don't you see the problem with that? You know, other Christians I talk to just kind of like will either say, oh, it's just poetry, or, you know, it's whatever. But, you know, witnesses, they own that shit. Great.
And then with the shunning as well, there's the other side of it as well, which I've got off my grandma before, which is, you know, it's the other person's choice, the person who's left, it's their choice to leave, and they're giving up this amazing gift that from Jehovah. So, you know, why would you want to align yourself close with someone who has given up the greatest gift ever? They must be idiotic or stupid or, you know, brain dead in some way or something like that. So there's this sense that you don't want to be, as a chose witness, when your family members leave, you don't want to align yourself with that person because somehow they have a mental disease.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's right that they're in the world, because that's the place where all the other mentally diseased people are.
Oh yeah, man.
Exactly.
Like Jesus and God are just in heaven giving each other high fives when people die. Or that's what they do when people get this fellowship. High five, man. That's another guy we can destroy.
It's a fucked up fantasy. Absolutely fucked up fantasy.
Oh yeah. It is, man.
There was another point from the cartoon as well that at the end there where Caleb is fantasizing about his dad tripping over his toy, and how like just blown out of proportion that was.
It looked like there was a home invasion.
Yeah, it was literally like a bunch of robbers had just broke in and just smashed everything up or something. Absolutely terrible. But it reminded me of when I was a kid. You know, that's how through the indoctrination, that's how everything was to you. Every time you made a mistake, you just blow it out of proportion inside your mind. The fear of, You know, making Jehovah sad, making your parents sad, making the elders sad, making everyone sad. The fear of losing all of that because you made this one little tiny mistake.
Oh yeah.
It's taking the child's innocence away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another thing it made.
Yeah.
Another thing it made me think of too was, you know, and this is just something that came to mind, but their style for exaggeration, just the same way as they might say, "Oh, if you leave." It's not that you're gonna just leave and be a good person and, you know, one die of natural causes. It's you're gonna go be a terrible person. You're probably gonna end up in jail. You're gonna be a drunkard. You're gonna be a drug addict. You know, this long list of things that is, you know, is not going to be realistic. And additionally, you know, there's the simple truth that there are plenty of problems that everyone deals with that they're able to get help with that's not from the Bible.
Oh yeah.
And so, you know, not only do they set it up as though all these terrible things will happen when you leave, but additionally that you won't be able to be a truly good person or get help for these things and get over these problems unless you're one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
just not obviously not realistic.
Yeah, but they honestly don't see it that way. Like even when I left, one of the things that I was really conscious of was watching myself devolve into like just you know, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, man. You know, like I thought I was just gonna like go 100% crazy because that was always my thought and what everybody was taught was that, you know, you leave the truth, where are you gonna go? You're gonna go nowhere, so you might as well just go do, you know, it's like Paul said, if there's no resurrection, then eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. And so I was like, yep, if I was to ever leave, that's exactly what I would do. Just go and party my ass off. But there was no desire to do any of that shit. Like, in fact, I was so convinced that it wasn't the truth that I wanted to prove to other people and myself that I wasn't going to be that person, you know, because I didn't want to make their little fantasy come true, you know. So, yeah.
Sure.
Mhm.
Barlock, attack! Oh no, it's Sparlock!
Caleb!
We need someone to save us!
Caleb!
Sparlock can activate your magic, Sparlock!
Hi. How was school today?
Fine. Look at Sparlock's magic key!
Caleb, what toy is that?
It's Sparlock, the warrior wizard!
Whoa, a warrior wizard.
Yeah, my friend gave it to me. All the kids are going to see the movie. Can I see it too?
Oh, your friend gave this to you. You look pretty excited about this. Why don't you come over here and get your snack, okay? Is this toy magical?
Mm-hmm.
Caleb, who likes magic? Jehovah or Satan?
Satan.
Right. Magic is bad. That's why Jehovah hates it. Do you really want to play with something that Jehovah hates? Do you remember who we learned about at family worship? Who is this?
Adam and Eve.
Right. Did they obey Jehovah?
No, they disobeyed Jehovah. And he got very sad.
So what if you disobey Jehovah and play with toys he doesn't like? Do you think Jehovah will be happy or sad?
Sad.
Yeah. Do you want Jehovah to be sad?
No! I don't want Jehovah to be sad with me.
No, I don't want Jehovah to be sad with you either. So what do you think you should do with this toy? Caleb, I am so proud of you. You made Mommy very happy. And you know who else is happy?
Jehovah.
Yes. Jehovah loves you very much for obeying him, Caleb. Hey, you know what I want to do?
What?
I want to go ride bikes.
Yay!
Let's go!
Back into there we go. Yeah, so that was the next cartoon. How we are all meant to hate magic. Anything that's magical, we've got to hate that somehow.
I guess we hate Moses.
Right.
Dropping a stick and turning into a snake and eating the other magician snakes.
Mm-hmm.
They used to be snakes. We hate Moses then.
That's right.
Yeah, it seems like it's all right if it's in the Bible, if God's the one doing the magic or God's representatives are the ones doing the magic, that's all right. But anybody else doing it, oh, that's Satan doing that.
We hate the priests who are getting the allegedly unfaithful women to drink dirty tabernacle floor water.
Mm-hmm.
That makes them miscarry their babies.
That's right.
Yeah, I guess we gotta hate that too.
I hate that too. Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought it was funny. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. I was just saying, Cat the Humanist is mentioning that in the chat, she's saying nothing to do with Halloween and sort of thing. So I think there's a big part of that for Jehovah's Witnesses is all of this Halloween.
Absolutely. And I just thought it was funny that they're asking the question, who likes magic, Jehovah or Satan? If we're really going to answer that question, then everything y'all just mentioned, we're going to have to knock Moses out. I mean, the only time that Satan is documented, which, mind you, Satan's really not talked about that much in the Bible, because, of course, that would mean God sharing the spotlight. The only time that Satan's really attributed to some sort of magic, if that's what you want to call it, is the Garden of Eden that I can think of. And maybe there's something else, but many times through various miracles. I mean, what else are you going to call it? It's magic. So if we're really answering that question, I say the scales are tilted in the side of Jehovah.
Does Jehovah hate himself? Because Adam was technically a golem spell.
Yeah. And then what about Jesus as well? The death of Jesus, all of that. That's blood magic, isn't it?
Yeah, gotta hate Jesus now. Damn. Damn.
So many contradictions. Yeah, it just shows the mentality, though, of what the governing body's trying to teach children here about, how you've got to hate magic in any form. It's just an extension of only do what we tell you to do. Don't have fun in any other way. Don't, engage in anything that the world does. You've got to always engage in the fulfilling spiritual life that we're, putting before you.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. It's beyond words. I mean, yeah, you got to hate everything in the Bible. Then, I mean, how do you tell the difference between miracles and magic?
I want to be able to tell the difference between regular water and flood the earth water, because obviously without magic, how did Jehovah get more water on the earth to flood every single mountain?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It had to be magic water.
Yeah. How did he get the?
Now we gotta hate Jehovah. Hey.
Yeah. How did he get the kangaroos from Mount Ararat to Australia? Fucking magical hopping.
Exactly. And how do you flood the earth and not completely destroy all of the life in the in the oceans because you're now mixing salt water with fresh water. And how do you produce more water than because the Earth only has 70% of it as water. So where's all this extra water coming from? It's you've got, and then where does all that extra water go after the flood's gone?
They receded back into the ground.
The winds.
Huh?
Well, we don't believe in science if it disagrees with what we believe. So,
Right.
Yeah. That's magic.
We can totally have an Earth and all the heavier elements before stars were made. That totally makes sense.
Oh yeah.
We don't need the hydrogen and helium to explode and go supernova and create heavier elements. Screw that.
Oh,
Yeah.
That would make Jehovah sad.
That would make him very. And the fine tuning argument, like. For me, I never understood the fine tuning argument. Like they say, well, God, it proves the miracle of the supernatural God that created everything. Look how fine tuned the universe is for life. But it's like, but that just kind of proves naturalism, because if things were not fine tuned for life and we're just miraculously here, now that would be a miracle.
We wouldn't be able to think about how fine tuned we are.
Yeah.
My mechanical pencil is more fine-tuned than this planet. I can guarantee you of that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, how fine-tuned is it all really?
Yeah. The next question I would ask is, what percentage of the Earth could we as humans survive on?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And show me how it's fine-tuned for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're going to say that the universe is fine-tuned, what percentage of the universe can we exist in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that number then becomes millions of times smaller, billions of times smaller, in fact. Because, and if God's just clicking his fingers and, I'll create this and I'll create that, click, click, why does everything need to be fine-tuned?
Right. Exactly. That's my thing. Like, it just doesn't point in that direction.
You know what needs to be fine-tuned? God's logic. Because it sucks right now.
Yeah. And the whole free will thing, how does that magically work?
Don't
On that one.
Don't open up that can of worms when I'm here.
Yeah, we don't want to get into that. We'll be here for the next 4 hours.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No, the magic thing really, I remember when I was a kid that the magic thing is one of those things that stuck with me after I left because of the level of indoctrination into that. And there was one event which thinks that I actually started reading Harry Potter books when I was a kid. And I'd read the first 2 books and I absolutely loved reading Harry Potter, and it was like a really good release for me just to lose myself in this fantasy. And I got grassed up to the Circuit Overseer by one of my friends that I was reading Harry Potter, and Circuit Overseer approached me at the meeting and sort of subtly tried to suggest that I stop reading them. And I stood up for myself and went, no, I'm going to carry on reading them. I don't see what the problem is, and he sort of just left it at that. Well, I thought he did anyway. He came round to my house the following day and took me out into the back garden with the books and lit a fire and went, throw them in there, and then forced me to throw them in the fire, and then said, and then like held the back of my head and forced me to look at the fire and went, now look at that fire. That is what will happen to you if you don't stop these childish fantasies. And sort of it's just seared that memory into my mind. And even to this day, I still have big trouble playing any sort of magical games or watching anything magical on TV or anything like that. So that it's not like really nasty shit, but
It's abuse.
just the message that they give across is not a message of peace at all.
I'm confused on what was the burning bush reading Harry Potter books?
Right.
I don't I'm okay.
Just unbelievable. Just truly, truly unbelievable that he would have the audacity. Truly the audacity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's privilege.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be back in 2 secs.
Fucking privilege right there.
Yeah. Can't say a thing about that.
And that's so your earlier thought, Scott. That was something for me too that stuck around. I still haven't seen Pokemon.
Really?
You know, I was never
You
allowed
haven't?
to. No, I was never allowed to
shit.
watch or trade cards, or because of course that would make Jehovah sad. So you know, anything fun would probably result in Jehovah sadness.
Yeah. You can't do anything really. It's all just bullshit. It's like you can't even date a girl. You know, when you're a teenager, you can't really,
Here's a question.
Mhm.
Would I possibly be able to get a Jehovah's Witness on my show for a debate?
Nope. Very, very hard.
That's like a unicorn.
Hmm.
I got a Jehovah's Witness church like 3 miles up the road. What if I just stopped in there real friendly, like be like, hey, anybody want to have a conversation?
Nobody will be there.
No, elders they'd go right to the elders, and then they'd come to you and be trying to question you. What is your motives? What are you trying to do? Who are you?
They'd probably call the police because of
Or
course
the-
that's
yeah.
a heinous crime.
They'd ask you to do a Bible study with them first.
I'd love to. I do one every Tuesday. They're more than welcome to come.
Yeah.
I got Jews, Muslims, Christians, atheists, all kinds of people there. Come
Mhm.
on in.
Yep. I go to this Facebook group, Jehovah's Witnesses and Friends, and I start trolling people. But I try to do it in a really respectful way because I'm really trying to help. I've actually managed to help a lot of people. I'd like to think I have anyways. But they'll always tell you, well, come to this website. If you want to talk about the Bible, we'll have some Jehovah's Witness and some elders come by your house. Or we'll set up a Zoom meeting and you can have a meeting that way, or they'll refer you to the jw.org website. They're very funny about unstructured Bible discussion. Like it's all got to be under the guise of the Watchtower and Tract Society guidelines. That's how they keep control and manage control, because it's not about understanding the Bible or critical thinking. It's just about, following suit.
Yeah, I don't think they'd actually turn up to your Bible study anyway, Justin. You tear them to pieces
Mhm.
in a biblical debate. The
Oh,
thing with
yeah.
Jehovah's Witnesses, they think they know the Bible very well, but it's all a very weird interpretation of the Bible that they have.
Yep. It is. They don't have much of an answer to anything. And they usually just run away really quick.
Yeah. But they have a script that they have to use, and they're drilled on using that script. They're basically very much like Darth Dawkins in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
They have a particular thing that they've got to use, and you're not, as in a conversation with them, you're not allowed to go off that script.
Yeah.
They have all these little techniques to move
Oh,
you
yeah.
back onto that script again, and
it actually literally is a script. It's a book called Reasoning from the Scriptures.
yeah.
And you go through that book at the Theocratic Ministry School. At least when I was back there, they'd reserve Thursday night for that. And you learn how to deal with, certain objections and questions.
I just requested Put in my application for Jehovah's Witnesses and Friends.
See if you can get something going with them.
Hey.
Yeah, there is some Jehovah's Witnesses on there, but from what I've gathered, it's run by it's mostly run by atheists anyway.
Oh, really? Yeah, I figured it was. Because all my posts get everything I post or meme or whatever, which is really just poke at witnesses. They approve all that shit. It's like I'm wondering. This doesn't seem like witnesses to me. They'd be like all over that shit. No, get rid of him.
That's why I got to show up at the place where I know it's them.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, one of the admins, or one of the mods, I'm not sure. I'm trying to get her on the show anyway because,
Oh, really?
yeah, she's an ex-JW, so.
So it's probably an apostate site.
Yeah, but you still
Her
get
name
some
happen to be Lillian?
JWs frequenting.
You're an apostate.
Perhaps, Justin, you should request a free Bible study on the website.
Have them come to your house.
Yeah, I do that with the Mormons.
Oh, yeah.
Mormons are awesome. I
Yeah.
love having the Mormons over. Because they're like 19 years old and they come over and then I start dissecting the Trinity. And they're like, I just started studying a couple months ago. And I'm like, but wait, you're the one that they're sending out?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I work on furnaces for a living.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like a glass of water?
Right? Yeah.
No, they don't. They send you like people who are a bit more experienced than 19-year-old, but
Okay. I'll just
but
have
they still
cameras
follow
set up in my
exactly the
house.
same script.
Now, I have saw a witness do a discussion with an atheist on YouTube. It was an elder. And, man, he grilled that elder hard, man. And that elder was trying to stand his own, but, man, he was failing hard, which isn't really hard to do. But the guy was like, basically a whole look at the trees type of argument.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know
That's
that
all
one.
he had. And the atheist guy was like just asking a question after, like just doing like street epistemology. And the elder was like getting flustered. The guy was like street epistemology. He was like a Magna Bosco type guy. Like he was just tearing his ass up.
To me, that's the greatest irony of all of this time spent, back when there was the Theocratic Ministry School and, the little presentation. How do you even call it? What did we used to call it? I guess we just call it a presentation, eh?
Mm-hmm.
When they would get up on stage and
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
act out this, as though they were at a door.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's the irony. After all of that training, even if you made it up to elder, you get asked a few actual, real, honest questions, and you have no answer.
Oh man, an atheist turned me around. That's what got me out of it. It was this atheist at work when I was at the Virginia State Police, and this atheist would just destroy my arguments, like not even know how to. And I'd go back to the elders and ask them, "What do I say when he says this?" Because I feel like a dumbass, and yeah, and he would just tell me what to say, and I'd go back, and I would just grill me and kill me. And finally, I just gave up, man. I was like, you know what? You're right. I don't make any sense right now, and nobody's telling me anything different.
Well, the answer that you usually get given when someone's asking you questions that you can't answer is, oh, they're not serious about wanting to know. They're just making up these awkward questions that have no merit whatsoever. Because they're being tainted by Satan, and it's just they're just being sent by Satan to tempt you to into doubting. So just
they're not
don't talk to
sincere.
them.
Yeah, don't talk to them. They're not interested in helping themselves or anybody else.
Yeah, and you see that on some of the YouTube channels. So I watch a YouTube channel called Ted the Atheist. And he goes,
yeah.
yeah. And have you seen him when he asks some of the questions to the show's witnesses on the stands, and they can't answer, and then they're like, "No, we're not going to talk to you anymore." And he's like, "Why? I want to know. Answer my question." And he's like, and they're like, "No, we're not going to talk to you anymore. You're not serious. You don't really want to know."
Yeah.
And they just dodge out that way, which is very dishonest.
Okay, cool. So if they're gonna do that at the beginning of the conversation, I'm gonna say there are some things that I might ask. Will you give me your full, honest cooperation? And I truly do want to know what you believe and why you believe it. Are you willing to answer these questions without shying away and ending the conversation? If they say yes, then they're kind of stuck.
Yeah. That's what it is. That's where Ted the Atheist, I think, doesn't do. Because I've watched his stuff too. He's from LA too. And he goes downtown where the witnesses, it's really funny. Downtown in LA, there's the Black Israelites, the Scientologists, and the Jehovah's Witnesses. And they all share the same street.
That's a fun street.
Oh yeah, the Black Israelites are out there swinging the Bible and screaming at people, and the Scientologists are conducting little tests on you, and Jehovah's Witnesses are just there with a big rack of magazines.
Being boring.
Really boring. And Ted the Atheist just like uses a skateboard and skates down the street and talks to each and every one of them, on each block. Okay. We go to the next guy. But he kills the Jehovah's Witnesses. That's so funny.
Yeah, I like the episode where he was, where they'd all recognised him already because he'd been doing it for so long, and he was literally chasing them round the town because they kept trying to get away from him.
He has that little GoPro on his head. Chasing every religious person down. It's hilarious.
Did y'all ever have it where, with going door to door, you would find somebody kind of like the people you've been talking about who really know their stuff, will ask the hard-hitting questions, and then they get volunteered to be on the do not call list, and like you make the decision that they're going on the do not call list because they're asking too many tough questions? Do you guys ever have that experience?
Yeah. So when I was doing it, I didn't like to put people on the do not call list. I'd talk to people anyway, no matter what the questions were. But I'd always get elders or elders' wives and that were with me at the time, who were telling me, "Oh no, you need to put them on the do not call list. They're not sincere. They're just tempting you into doubting. Don't let them get in your head. They're clearly working for Satan, and the fact that they're asking questions so blatantly, they must know it as well. So
they're probably apostates."
Yeah.
Which, that's crazy to me because from my perspective, if I really believed that God was love and wanted everybody to serve him and wanted to look past the hardening of Pharaoh's heart and all those things we mentioned earlier, if that was really me, wouldn't those people be the ones that needed the good news the most?
Yeah.
That's the hypocrisy of it all,
Oh yeah. But like they always say, it keeps the drama alive. It keeps. He doesn't want to end the story too quick. So he could have killed Satan too from the very beginning, or helped Satan and saved him. If he had saved him, then we wouldn't have this whole story.
I just heard something from Graham Oppie. It was fantastic. I forget what it. He's got these 7 premises that are just that most believers would accept, but are self-contradictory once you get through all of them. I forget what they are. I have to tell you later. I gotta watch it again. I've only seen it once. He was talking to a Christian theologian, and it was just mind blowing.
Wow.
I highly suggest any atheist to. I like the Matt Dillahunties and the ACA and whatnot. If you really want to get into like philosophy, check out Graham Oppie. The dude is just
Yeah, he's
Just
on my list to watch, definitely.
yeah.
I'm a little bit busy at the moment, but I haven't had a chance to get round to watching any of his stuff. But I'm definitely going to get round to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So should we move on to the next video? We've got 3 videos left. These are just little short ones, but we'll move on to them, I think.
Anytime, anywhere, I can pray, and Jehovah will hear what I say. When each morning I wake, I remember to take just a moment to thank Him for this day, for the wonders I find on the way. In my mind, in my heart, I can pray, even when there's a crowd and I can't pray out loud. Still, Jehovah will hear me anyway. Anytime, anywhere, I can pray, and Jehovah will hear what I say. In the night He will hear when I call, He is near. Anytime, anywhere, I can pray.
Forever.
Okay. I think I've already done a debate on the effectiveness of prayer, and I got the believer to tell me that prayer is not able to be proven to be effective.
Definitely an interesting conversation, but I think first we need to mention how terrible that little kid was at singing. Could they not have picked someone who was a better singer for that?
Couldn't they pray that she would not be the one singing on that video?
It wasn't God's will. That would have made him sad.
Yeah, Jehovah's sad right now.
No, but
After all, he is
praying all day. I think it was you mentioned in backstage there, Scott, about how can you pray all of the time, because that's basically what they're asking us to do there.
Pray incessantly, unceasingly.
No, and that's what it's like as Jehovah's Witness. It's part of the indoctrination, isn't it? You've got to, and it's not just Jehovah's Witnesses. Other religions do this too, where you've got to pray continuously to get rid of the doubts, get rid of the questions, to prove it all to yourself.
How is God going to know you love Him and are thinking about Him if you're not praying? How is He going to know that?
Yeah,
He's God.
Right.
He's all knowing, He's all seeing, He's all powerful, and yet
You have to pray.
You have
And yet
to.
He's not.
Yeah, he's. He knows
He'll
everything.
never respond.
He doesn't.
Oh, you just missed the sign. You missed the signs. He clearly showed you, even though it wasn't clear to you.
Well, see, this is the thing, Justin. You don't understand. When you're praying and it doesn't come true, it's because that was God's will.
Yeah.
So the prayer still came true.
Yep.
You ask, if it's your will that this happen, do it.
Matthew 6.
Yeah. So it's very
One thing-
falsifiable.
One thing I remember, and it just kind of came to mind based on this whole pray incessantly thing. My mother, my grandmother, there were times when they would pray for an hour and a half. And I remember this because I was young enough that I still relied on them for everything. And so I would, go to my mom's room. Oh, she's praying. All right, I'll come back. And I would keep coming back every 20 minutes, 3-4 times. And it's like, I mean, good grief. What's happening here? But it's the idea, because something else that popped into mind was it's running interference on working out problems on your own, isn't it? And doing real research and all of that. If like you said, Katie, is the moment that doubts come to mind, or temptation, whatever, then you're immediately praying to cause interference there, and try to, and of course, from a witness mind, try to get back on the right track. So it is absolutely part of the indoctrination.
It's like, damn, Mom, just send him a text message.
Get him on the phone.
Couldn't you abbreviate whatever you're saying?
Yeah. And what's this thing? It's like, if we all get together and pray, does that make it stronger?
It says so in the Bible. If two or more pray, whatever they ask for shall be granted. Which means that two people or more have never ever prayed for a hurricane and not sweep out a coastline.
Mm-hmm. If only they'd do that.
Two or more people. You know what? I bet you 2 or more people prayed that Trump was still going to be president. I bet you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I bet you my whole next year's salary.
Chris Kuhn. He even talks about that.
Which doesn't make sense, as seen as there's all these prophets saying that, that Trump has been sent by God and he's God's representative for America, and yet there's all these people praying for him to be the next president, and it's not God's will somehow for him to be president.
Yeah. And what about the scripture in Romans where it says, submit yourself to the authorities. Anyone who rebels against the authorities is rebelling against God. It's like, well, if you're rebelling against Biden being the president, isn't that like rebelling against Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
No, but what you were saying, Jared, about prayer, that's there's actually scientific research that's been done around prayer and that, and I think you were touching on some of that as well, Justin. And the research I was looking into on it is where they were actually mapping what parts of the brain are being used in different religious actions. And with prayer, there's a very large part of the brain, a very large network, which is specifically activated, which is to do with emotions. When someone is praying to a God that they believe in. And the interesting thing is it actually blocks out the rational centers of the brain because it's such a large network. So it makes sense that religion would have that incorporated into it to, block out the logic and the rationality of someone. So if you do have doubts, just pray. Then you block all of that stupid rationality and interfering logic out of the equation.
Yeah, witnesses talk about that a lot, about the human mind and the faults, the philosophy of men, and they really like to downplay intellectualism a lot. Like, it's one of their main things. Like, if it's like, oh, those kind of questions, those are just the carnal mind. Logic is, in philosophy, is of the carnal mind. It's just deception of the devil. But praying and emotionalism, that's where it's at. That's where you're going to find truth. But if you press them on it, because they say two things at the same time, though. They also tell you that while they tell you that man cannot, direct his own steps and stuff like that, they also tell you that you can't go by your feelings. Your feeling, who knows the heart? The heart is misleading, and the feelings, you can't go by that. So they say two things at the same time.
Yeah.
which I think all religions do.
Well, exactly. Actually, I'd just like to shout out in the chat. We've just got Ollie Knight online, a good friend of mine. I know him in person. Lives near me. Welcome to the stream, Ollie. And he makes a good point there. A lot of wars have people on both sides being blessed by the same God before they battle one another. And
Yeah.
I think that touches on what we were saying perfectly. How contradictory it can be.
It also reminds me of, like, you got two opposing football teams, each before the game are huddled up in a circle, praying probably to the same God, hoping that they will win and be victorious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in other words, God's like one of them people that bet on horse races and bet both ways. He's balancing the odds.
Yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses will at the same time, ironically, make that very same argument that you just made, Justin. They'll, I think it was the Paradise on Earth book, where I think in one of the beginning chapters, when they're criticizing Christendom and world religions, they'll say everybody's praying that their nation's going to win the war, but God can't be divided, can he? God can't be with the Japanese and also with the Germans and also with America in World War II. So whose side was God really on when everybody's praying to God to be the winner? And they'll say that Jehovah wasn't involved in any of it because, God is not of the world. This is Satan's world. And they're all praying to Satan. And that's why Jehovah's Witnesses don't get involved in politics and don't get involved in worldly affairs or sports or anything like that. Because they feel like Jehovah's, against all that kind of stuff. But then, to your point, though, you do an internal critique of Jehovah's Witnesses, you'll find all these contradictions with that, though, too.
Yeah.
I
think it was we were chatting pre-show, me and you, Scott, about to do with, I think we were talking about Darth Dawkins and how I'd raised a point with him about how do you know that you're not being deceived by Satan when you're with your beliefs, because you're really sure about them, and the Bible says that you need to be careful that you're not sure about something and you're being deceived by Satan instead of getting the information right. And Jehovah's Witnesses, this is a big part of the ideology, is that everyone else is being deceived.
Right,
we
that's
know
their
what we know is right, but they're all being deceived. But how do these 8 million people know that they're not the ones being deceived?
Exactly, because it says so right there in the Bible.
Yeah.
And then I asked them, well, how do you know the Bible is true? Because it says so right there in the Bible. It's true.
But then the Bible also says so. Deuteronomy 18:20 through 22 talks about how, be wary of the false prophets, and how do you know someone? And the questions asked in them scriptures, how do you know when there's a false prophet teaching you things? And it says by the predictions that they make not coming true.
Right.
And well, who do we know as a group of 8 men who make plenty of predictions that never come true?
The champions. Hands down champion of that shit is Jehovah's Witnesses. They've been predicting the end of the world since the middle of the 19th century, and they've been hitting the reset button ever since. They always blame it on, oh well, we're not prophets, we're just Bible students. They'll come up with some. That's the thing about religion. There's always a loophole. There's always a way out. But there's no way to really know if they're the truth. If that's your method, if you can't falsify it, then how do we know it's true? Because you can always say, well, prayer didn't work this time because it wasn't God's will. Well, I can't tell the difference between God's will and no will at all. You know, it's just that's the weakness of the prayer argument.
Exactly. This is why this is why in science we don't go off somebody's experience. It's why we go off the empirical evidence, and that's the only real way to know if anything is truly true. Is through empirical evidence, not through this experiential evidence where you're like, oh well, I feel it to be the case. I know this to be true because this guy told me so. It's a terrible way to get knowledge.
And what's even better about that is science is conditional. It's true for now, but it's tentative until we get better evidence or evidence that can contradict it, and we can find out because it was true that the Earth was the center of the universe, and then that truth became not true anymore, and then Newton's gravity and Newton's laws. And then we kind of discovered relativity and quantum mechanics, and we've added and changed the whole world paradigms up. And that's what science does. They go along with the evidence, which is great. But, with witnesses and religion in general, it's all about, digging your heels into beliefs. And when there's evidence contrary to those beliefs, you just reject them, because that's a way to glorify God and put him over evidence. It's kind of like the presuppositional argument of Darth Dawkins or Jehovah's Witnesses, where they're like, how can you give credence to evidence when you don't give credence to God first? You have to rest your anchor on God, not evidence. And Jehovah's Witnesses are big on that too.
Yeah, definitely. I don't get that argument though, that you can't know anything unless you accept God. It seems like an argument that's just going to go nowhere. It seems, and also seems quite a convenient argument as well, that argument that Darth Dawkins uses, because well, you can't possibly know anything because you don't believe in God. That's
he'll say you don't have a non-contingent absolute primary metaphysic to ground all knowledge and rationalism in.
Yeah,
so
have an ultimacy of reality.
Yeah, it's just arbitrary and meaningless. If you say that you have no free will, there is no God, there is no absolute, thing, then everything you say is just a product of chemicals. It's like saying, if you shake up a can of Pepsi and a can of Dr. Pepper and you open them up and the chemicals go fly out, well, which one is fizzing the truth? That's their argument. If you're just a bag of chemicals that's just going through the motions, you're no better than a can of Coke that's been shook up. You don't tell truth. Neither does a can of Coke.
Yeah. And it's just a massive circular argument, because no matter what you ask or whatever, it always comes back to the same argument. And Ollie's making that point in the chat there. But when you say, how do they know the Bible is true? They say, I think we all know the bloody answer.
2 Timothy 3:16. All scripture is inspired by God.
Yeah. You can't use that as a plausible answer to those questions. You can't.
How do you know, did Paul know his letter to Timothy was scripture? Was that statement scripture? Because the scripture wasn't scripture until the 4th century by the early Catholic Church?
Yeah, exactly.
Who decided that shit? Paul didn't know that was scripture. He was referring to the Old Testament when he was talking about all scripture inspired. He wasn't talking about his own letter.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, if he did, then where does it say that?
Well, if he was inspired by God, then.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
And with like say the things that Jesus said, you know, in the Bible, you know, he said that like what 60, 70 years before it was written down.
Hmm.
If God's all powerful and wanted everyone to know this, you know, these messages that he sent his son to tell us, then why was it not written down for 60, 70 years?
Right.
Surely there was people who knew that knowledge, and, you know, maybe they couldn't write, but surely they'd have been praying to God to give them the ability to write it down, to pass it on. But it took 60, 70 years, which again is another...
You know, like we know for a fact that the long ending of Mark is an addition. We know that the story of the lady caught, you know, committing adultery, when Jesus said, you know, those without sin cast the first stone. We all know that stuff were additions. They weren't they were made up stuff written hundreds and hundreds of years after, you know, the first century. So if those can be added, then how do we know any of it really is, you know? I mean, I know that there's certain ways that they, you know, that scholars can piece it together, you know, I think with the many manuscripts argument or whatever, but still, if it's inspired of God, why would any of it be false, you know?
And who decided what was inspired by God and what wasn't inspired by God? Because we have plenty of non-canonical gospels, which, you know, which was a group of men who sat down and decided, oh, these are inspired by God, these aren't.
Right, because really the gospels, the stories that we have were all oral traditions. But, you know, the Gnostics were circulating their own stories that eventually got into publication or whatever in the first century. And they weren't added in because of popularity. It was considered heretical by the early church because the Gnostics pretty much put more emphasis on the individual. You know, that's how they interpreted the message of Christ as God being within you, you know. And of course, the church didn't want to go along with that. So those scriptures, like the Book of Thomas and other books like that, were thrown out.
Yeah, definitely. I was actually interested in hearing what you were mentioning, Justin. We're going back to the prayer. I know we got a bit off topic, but going back to the prayer, I was interested in hearing what your thoughts on the effectiveness of prayer.
Well, we have done studies. It was actually not we, because I'm not part of this organization. It was called the Templeton Foundation, and the Templeton Foundation is a religious organization. I wouldn't say that they're specifically Christian or specifically really anything. I do know that they are of a theistic nature, and they set out to show the effectiveness of prayer and to prove it using the scientific method. So they went to 6 different hospitals. At each of these hospitals, they took 3 control groups from each section. They went to the terminally ill section of the hospital, to people who were basically had a certain period of time left to live. And what they did, they broke them into 3 different groups. One group was they were being prayed for, and they were told that they were being prayed for. The second group was they were being prayed for, but they weren't being told that they were being prayed for. And the third group, nobody did anything with. At the end of it, pretty much laid out like it was a flip of a coin. Actually, the ones who knew that they were being prayed for ended up having a higher mortality rate due to the fact that they had performance anxiety. So they were like, "Oh shit, they're praying for me. That means that if I'm going to help them prove this right, I got to do a good job and not die." They actually died more often. So it goes to show you that if somebody prays for you, this is on intercessory prayer. So there's other forms of prayer, but it goes to show you that when praying for somebody's, life to keep going, it's not effective. They went to go prove this, but they actually proved that it was literally, the chance was like a flip of a coin.
Completely contradicts what you were saying earlier about which goes with what you were saying earlier about the scripture about two people praying for someone. It should come true.
If two people next to each other are praying for something, it shall be done.
Yeah.
It also says, Matthew 7:7, that ask and you shall receive. But it also says in Matthew 6 that when you pray, that you should be praying and asking for whatever you would like to ask for. But at the very end, also notice that God's will shall be done. That is effectively how you unfalsify the claim of prayer. Because once you say that, then God will always answer your prayer every single time. Because if you get what you want, that was God's will. If you didn't get what you want, that wasn't God's will. Regardless, God answered your prayer with a yes, no, maybe not right now.
Yeah. Or a fuck off.
And then I'll say timing, because it didn't happen exactly when and in the way you thought it was supposed to happen. But, maybe God's going to answer your prayer 20 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to wait on Jehovah.
Yeah, well, that really helps the terminally ill, doesn't it? Who have 6 months to live.
Don't worry, the resurrection.
Did answer their prayer. They have to walk around.
I don't know what has worse evidence, the resurrection or the Exodus.
Yeah.
No, that's a tough one, isn't it?
Another flip of the coin.
Oh, I had a debate with somebody about the Exodus a couple of months ago. Yeah.
You should ask him what kind of miracle would happen for millions of people to be walking through the desert and not a single bowl, not a single utensil, not a single bone, not a single body has been left over from the 40 years that they walked in the desert, even though it was 9 miles that way.
Right.
Sounds like magic to me. Would that be from Jehovah?
Uh-oh. There's that M word again.
Magic.
It was... It was basically, if it did happen, it must have been like a massive game of, the old Nokia phones. You had the game Snakes. And
love that game.
Yeah, it was basically just a massive game of that, wasn't it? Because if you've got 3 million, Jews walking across a 9-mile thing, and it took them 30 years, how the hell did they not bump into the tail end of the? Because they were obviously walking in circles. It's the only way it would have taken them 30 years.
Yeah, apparently God was sending way too many strong mushrooms from heaven. They must have been tripping for 40 years.
Is that what the manna was? God was just grinding up mushrooms and.
Yeah.
And don't you dare, as you're in exile going through the wilderness, don't you dare ask for any quail, because I'll kill you with it.
Yeah, so definitely, prayers obviously just doesn't work if it's no more than a flip of a coin.
Right.
You're at chance, base chance there, aren't you?
People will argue that conditions are flawed, and when you can't put God to the test like that. He's not just gonna answer prayers. But the thing is, if God really wants people to believe, then this would be a perfect opportunity for him to show himself. I can tell the difference between the hidden God and the non-existent one. And if he really wants me to believe, then he would know how to convince me to do so. And I always tell Christians that I talk to about this, I keep my bar very low, this low, not too low, but low enough to where, I could pray for something consistently and it show up, and then I would be reasonably convinced, but God can't even do that. So he must not want me to believe. And if that's the case, then I'm still justified to reject God belief, because he's not making it easy.
Yeah, well,
I
we've got a
believe it's
question
God.
in the chat. Turns out 2 kids were born in that time, and they called it 2 generations. Over time tearing, doesn't that turn the story into 40 years?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, there's all kinds of ways you can twist things to make it fit.
There you go.
what you got in the background? Oh, you've got the map
The
of
map.
the area.
The route that they took, that took them 40 years to take. And at
Wow.
the very bottom, if I go to this side, you can see scale in miles.
Hmm.
I can't quite see that number. What is the scale in miles?
Well, down at the very bottom. Oh, wait a second.
Just because the name on here. There we go. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So,
That is
What-
a very weird route to take across the desert, isn't it? It's,
Hmm.
yeah, when they could have went right across.
yeah, wouldn't it make more sense? Because they're starting up near the coast. If you're going to cross the desert like that, wouldn't it make
Just
more
take
sense
the
to
way
just
of the
go along the
Philistines, or
coast?
the way of Horus, right to Jerusalem. There you go.
Yeah.
Mm.
It just
Idiots.
absolutely makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, but God was with his people, and that was the route that it was his will for them to take. So,
Yeah, God works in mysterious ways.
If they didn't go that way, then there was going to be no need for manna, and God already had made the manna. So, I mean, might as well put it to use.
Right.
little did they know that there was such a timeline on waiting on Jehovah, huh?
Think about the amount of money it would have cost Jehovah to make all that manna. You know, buying the mushrooms and crushing it up, mixing it with the LSD, and
Yeah. Burning it in the bush later on. Getting Moses all messed up. Arcadia tree.
yeah.
Isn't that a tree heavy with DMT?
If he didn't use it, his drug supply would have been really pissed off.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right, well, I think we should get into the next video. I'm not sure which one this one is. I'm a bit lost now, but we'll get into it.
Good afternoon, shoppers. Stop by our bakery for today's specials. Additional customer service.
Come on, Caleb. Time to check out.
Did you find everything okay today?
Yes, I did. Thank you. Caleb, no candy today.
Coming up on aisle 4.
Yes, I do. It's somewhere in here.
If you steal, will you be Jehovah's friend? Do you want to be Jehovah's friend?
Thank you, ma'am. You're all set.
Let's go, honey.
That's true. And well, if he prayed for it, you know.
Yeah, exactly. What kind of friend gets me to pray for shit and don't come through?
Yeah, so that video about stealing there, nice short one, but I mean, you know, again we see there in that video, you know, oh, why shouldn't you steal? Oh, because it'll make Jehovah sad. Don't make Sky Daddy cry.
It's like the whole, person who's being watched versus the person who's not being watched. It's like, if you're in a bank and somebody drops some money out of their pocket and, there's cameras on the wall and you don't know if there's cameras on the wall, but, you pick the dollar up and you give it to the guy because he dropped his money. But then you have this other guy who knows there's cameras on the wall. So he picks the dollar up and gives it to the guy because, hey, there's cameras on the wall. Who's the more moral out of those two people? You know?
The one who didn't know the camera was there.
I would think so.
Yeah. And that's the thing with Jehovah's Witnesses is you're always doing things. You're not doing them because you think they're right to do. You're doing them because you're fearful of, pissing off some all-seeing deity.
Mm-hmm.
So how can Jehovah's Witnesses, and by extension other theists in other religions that have this teaching, how can you ever say that you have the moral high ground?
Right. And if you're a witness that was raised that way and you've lost your way, let's say you don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness, does that mean it's okay to steal because no one's watching anymore? You know?
I think we've all had to deal with those questions leaving religion. We've all had to deal with that conundrum, where we still feel it's wrong to do these things, but there's now nothing stopping me.
That's the scary thing from what I've heard from so many people. Well, if there wasn't a God, then there's nothing stopping me from raping and killing a whole bunch of people. Well, please, for the rest of humanity, keep your ass in church then.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
It also sets up, like, stuff like this video that you just played also sets up a situation. And I noticed that even as an atheist, I was still doing it. And I've had to, me and my wife have had to work ourselves out of this type of reasoning. You tell your kids, clean up the toys or clean your room or go do this. And they say, but why? Because, I'm the atheist that's trying to teach my kids skepticism, like question everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then they turn that shit around on me and they say, why should I clean my room? Well, because I said so.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized, is that a really good answer to give them?
Mm-hmm.
Is because I said so, really explaining to them the quality of why I want them to do what I'm asking them to do.
Yeah, brilliant. A great point there. It's you need to know the reason why you're not to do something. In my view, you need to know that reason, and that's the most important thing that you need to be teaching children. Is you don't steal because how would you like it if someone stole from you?
Mm-hmm.
It's not a good feeling to have something stole from you. So don't do that because you wouldn't like it. So the other person's not going to like it.
Plus, I'll whoop your ass. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
Yeah, so I actually had a theist once who I was in a debate with, and we got onto morality, and they actually said that how do they know that I'm not going to murder them because I don't have God?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like,
How do you know? How do you know you're not going to murder them? That's what they asked?
No, how do they know that I'm not going to just murder them? Surely if I don't have God, I'm just going to murder them. Yeah, I was in a conversation with them face to face. And I'm like, because I haven't murdered you?
Right.
How do I know that you're not going to molest me?
Yeah.
Right.
It's all of this indoctrination. It's in a sense, and I don't like to say it, but in a sense it is just dumbing people down. To the point where they can't use logic, they can't use critical thinking, can't use the rational side of the brain properly. They're just ignoring all of that.
They can use it as long as it fits their narrative.
Mm-hmm.
But the minute you try and start using logic and reasoning, like they use logic and reasoning to come to the conclusion that the Trinity exists, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And then you bring up the logical issues of identity and non-contradiction and excluded middle and how they have to fall into some type of heretical view or equivocate somehow when describing the model of the Trinity that they believe in. Well, God doesn't have to adhere to logic.
Right.
Really? Okay, so now I can just create any god that I want to that doesn't have to adhere to any logic, and you could never tell me that he doesn't exist because God doesn't need to, he's not bound by the laws of logic.
You're appealing to the human mind. You're appealing to the sinful nature of your human nature.
That's actually been told to me before.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm appealing to the human mind. And I was like, without using the laws of logic, can you tell me that again?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Without using logical reasoning, please tell me how I'm appealing to my human mind.
Yeah. That's where faith comes in. And then they make all these logical arguments for faith, which they just undercut because they just said that logic is part of the human soul.
Yeah. And even the Bible says, I can't remember the verse, but the Bible actually says that, faith is believing in things without evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Hebrews 11:1 states that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen.
Yeah. Faith is the evidence, which is really kind of...
When you don't have evidence, faith is the evidence.
Is the evidence, right?
Exactly. And, if you I'll let you use the analogy that if you told you had a child and you told your child every single day of their life that the colour red is blue.
Mm-hmm.
So the sky is red, not blue. Then does that, and they then have faith and trust that the sky is red.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make it true? Can they use that as evidence?
Of course.
Yeah.
I always think of it as kind of like a virus, a mental virus. Really is, and it spreads easy, and kids are really susceptible to it because it appeals to magical thinking. Ironically enough, Jehovah's Witnesses are against magic, but they appeal to magical thinking all the time. That's what justifies all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I was in a debate with my grandma a few months ago, and she did that exact same argument with, it doesn't matter what the fundamental laws of the universe are. God will just click his fingers and make the earth exist forever, and then have a go at magic. But isn't that just magic, clicking your fingers and making something happen?
Right, exactly. That's all it is.
Uh-oh. We gotta hate Jehovah now.
Mm-hmm. Jehovah hates.
Exactly.
Man.
All right. Well, Katie, I appreciate you having me on. I do got to run here.
Yep, that's absolutely fine. Thank you very much for coming on. That's absolutely been a brilliant conversation. I know we got slightly off topic, but it's been fun.
I enjoyed it very much. If I don't get off of here tonight's supposed to be one of my off nights with the wife, but I told her, I was like, hey, I got a show to do tonight. She's like, all right, well, make sure you're done so I can go to the store. So I'm going to go down and watch my little one and hopefully get him tired and put him to bed. But I appreciate you having me on. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Almost Atheist. Are you almost atheist?
I am almost atheist.
What do you mean?
Somewhere between agnostic and atheist.
Okay. All right. We just define our terms differently, but I know what you mean. And I don't want to get into that, argument of definitions. However you define how you are and what you believe, I get it. I would consider myself an agnostic atheist. But I know exactly what you mean. But yeah,
I have a feeling I'll enjoy discussing that with you sometime if we get the chance.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if I don't want to do it right here on Katie's show, but get a hold of me on Facebook and we'll talk.
Looking forward to it.
All right, I'll see you guys later.
Catch you later.
Yeah, those labels are very interesting to talk about.
Definitely. I'm just going to change that. Now it's just the three of us. There we go.
A trinity of sorts.
Yeah, we're a trinity.
So do we want to play the last video, or have we got any more points to make on that last one?
I'm down for the last one.
Yeah, we'll play the last one and get out the way.
Sophia, are you ready to go out in service? What's in your bag? Looks like you're missing something. What do you need for service? Very good! You need your Bible for service. Do you need anything else? Kids, can you help Sophia? Which one does she need for service?
Magazines!
That's right, kids! Sophia, one more thing. How will you remember the people we meet? Very good! Do you have a pencil? Excellent, Sophia. I think you're all set. Kids, what do you think? Is she ready?
Yes!
Okay, let's go practice what you're gonna say.
It's an interesting way of doing their logo.
Yeah, so a nice topic for us to move on to now. The field service, one of the biggest parts of being a Jehovah's Witness, especially for children, is to, go out into the field service and preach the good news. But it's also one of the most disturbing parts of, the religion, I think, is, teaching kids to go out and, preach, and it becomes such a big part of your life as a child. You have no time for fun or games or anything that, children need to be happy. It just takes your innocence away.
Oh yeah, and it's teaching kids to be just one-sided, because when you go out and preach, you're not there to learn and have a conversation. You're just out there to tell people what to think, and what to follow. And you just do that enough, you get yourself into this routine of being preachy.
Yeah. And, you're also taught, to go and teach. It's not just going to the door-to-door and speaking to adults. You're taught as a child to go and preach to other children at school because, their parents may not be listening to the Jehovah's Witness when they're in the door-to-door work. So, you need to go and convince the children so that they can convince the parents, and it's completely fucked up.
And sometimes children are used as pawns, bring a cute little kid to the door. Who's going to say no to that?
Yeah.
So you're kind of using your kid to get a foot in the door.
Yeah, that was prevalent when I was a kid. It was like I'd overheard many, like elders and ministerial servants and that, when someone says, "Oh no, we can't go to that door because they're always aggressive and just tell us to fuck off."
Mm-hmm.
And you'd hear elders and ministerial servants turn around and say, "Oh well, we'll go and take this kid with you." And go and knock on the door again with the child there. They're not going to be aggressive then, are they? So,
yeah,
and that's just a nasty way to use children.
Absolutely.
Something that jumped out at me is that, of course, understandably so, contextually, they made it out to seem as though Sophia was just so eager to go in the service, so eager that she didn't realize she didn't have magazines, only a feather, you know. And in reality, it's really, at least the kids I knew and me as a kid, we weren't looking forward to it.
No,
we were trying to
definitely
get
not.
out of it. I remember times when my mom would pretty much bang on my door. I don't know why she did that, considering that there was no lock on my door. She could have just opened the door. But she would pretty much bang on my door and tell me to get up. And, you know, and of course, when I didn't respond, she would come in. And, I mean, there were times when she would cry because I didn't want to go. And I bring that up because it was a source of guilt for me. I'm feeling like, man, why, you know, I should want to go out and I should want to serve Jehovah and knock on doors, and shame on me for not feeling that way. And look at what I'm doing to my mom. And in fact, my mom used to say frequently, for more reasons than just me not wanting to go in service, but she would say, you know, I'm tired of having to fight you and fight Satan. That's how she would put it. So I bring this up because I think, you know, they act as though it's all rainbows and butterflies and kids just are eager beavers to go out in service. But in truth, a lot of kids, again, like I knew, were just about kicking and screaming, didn't want to be there, didn't want to stay long if they were out there. And there's a reason for that. It really is what turns out to be, at least again for me, on the back end, now that I have years to look back on, it turned out to be a rather traumatic experience in some cases. And I don't think I learned that many good things from it. Even though what I do for work is essentially public speaking, and I can kind of say maybe that helped, I don't think I really learned any great values from that experience.
And I don't think, you know, it was a pleasant experience for your mom either. I mean, even today, I can imagine she probably feels terrible that you're not a witness anymore, and she probably blames herself, and it's just a lot of pressure. You know, she like sees her child doesn't want to go, she doesn't want to go, no one really wants to go, but she's forcing herself, and now she's trying to force you, and she just feels bad that she's forcing you, and she probably just has a lot of conflicts, you know. And it's just a terrible reality to live in. That's why I was so, at least I feel like I'm so fortunate that I didn't have children back then when I was a witness, that I had to put them through all of that, because it's a sad thing, you know. It's just a real sad thing. And, you know, and as a man, you've got to be the leader in that whole situation. It's like, wow, I've got to drag my children through this and like take the lead in it, and thinking that their lives are at stake and my life is at stake. And it's just so irrational, such an irrational fear.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not the most fun religion at all, is it? I mean, most religion isn't fun, but it you know, Jehovah's Witnesses is definitely one of those ones that isn't very child friendly. The doctrine and the way that you taught things, you know, so it just takes all the fun out of life. I mean, I don't ever remember really having that much fun when I was a child. You know, so like, I think the most, you know, fun that I had was going to the conventions and trying my very hardest not to sit at in my seat, and find ways to just walk around the halls and stuff of the convention hall.
Yeah, it's such a sad life. And yeah, you would think that, you know, that they wouldn't be as popular as they are. Not that they're the most popular religion, but it's kind of magical that they get as many people as they do to stick with it as long as they do. But I guess after you kind of understand how the human mind works and how hypnotism works and how brainwashing works, it's not really a surprise after all. But yeah, man, it's indoctrination, and you know, it's really selfish. Like for parents, like I could imagine when I first became a witness, how zealous I was and excited I was to talk about it. Like you go through that honeymoon period where you're really excited, but children coming up in it, they miss that. They don't get that that sort of euphoric honeymoon phase because they're born into it. And so while the parents may be all excited and everything and pushing their kids, the poor children, man, they don't know what it is except just some boring bullshit they have to go through.
Yeah, exactly. There's a question in the chat from Cat the Humanist. Were you all homeschooled? I was. I can answer yes to that.
Me too.
Not me. They had no such thing when I was a kid. Too long ago.
Yeah, and I think homeschooling is a good topic to have a conversation about. But we are coming up to the end of the stream now, so I was thinking of having a bit of an after party after this. If you can stay, if you've got time to stay behind.
Sure.
Yeah, stay behind after school. You've both got detention.
Yeah.
I'll have to go in the back room.
Yeah, so if anybody wants an invitation to this, I can have 6 people in here. So if anyone wants an invitation, Kat, Fad, Ollie, that's absolutely fine. I'll send links out to you. So I'm going to end the stream now. Thank you both for coming on. Been an absolutely amazing conversation. Really enjoyed this.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Went off topic a few times, but I think we've covered quite a lot, and we've given people a lot of information about Jehovah's Witnesses in this.
Definitely.
Which is the main thing. So before we end it, I'd just like to give a shout out to the EA show. We had Justin, the host of the EA show, on. They're doing some really good stuff over there. So anybody who's viewing this, get over there and check them out. Very close to 1,000 subscribers, which is very exciting. Also, like to shout out my co-host for the Borg Skeptic show, Justin O'Donnell, the Fad. He's got some really good stuff going on over on his channel, which is the Fad on YouTube. And I'd also like to shout out Recovering from Religion. So anybody who's watching who may be leaving religion or needs some help with recovering from the effects of religious indoctrination, please check out Recovering from Religion. They're extremely good at what they do. So remember, ignorance is never bliss, and I'll catch you for the next show. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, shoppers. Stop by our bakery for today's specials. Additional customer service.
Come on, Caleb. Time to check out.